Welcome to the Art of Living with a Dog. I'm Tamara Tokash, a master dog expert with a fresh perspective in everyday wellness protocols, hacks, and products for both ends of the leash, stemming the tide so you and your dog can thrive. I've questioned the norms and connected the dots to forge a unique path that truly transforms how you and your free-spirited companion live. Let's get digging.
Welcome to the first episode in a powerful new series where we explore the deeper truth behind what it really means to live in harmony with our dogs. Today, I'm honored to introduce you to Tamara Tokash, an ambassador to dogs and an unconventional dog advisor with over 30 years of experience helping dogs and their humans thrive. Tamara is the creator of the Unleashed Theory, a groundbreaking approach that goes far beyond training. It's a complete energetic, emotional, and nutritional blueprint for restoring the connection between you and your dog and creating a balanced, joyful life together. She's also the author of the award-winning book, Blessed, the Laboratory Research Dog, the heartfelt story of a beagle named Sammy who overcame unthinkable odds and became a symbol of healing and hope. You'll find the link to Tamara's website and book in the description below. In today's video, we're starting with a high-level overview of the Unleashed Theory, what it is, why it's so different, and why it may just shift everything you thought you knew about your dog. Tamara will be unpacking each core principle of Unleashed in upcoming episodes, so make sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Tamara, you call yourself an ambassador to dogs and an unconventional dog advisor. What do those titles mean to you, and how do they reflect the heart of your work?
The word ambassador is, a representative, a messenger to share a message. And animals, and dogs included, they don't have a voice. And I've always seen myself as the person, the steward, if you will, to be their voice, to be their advocate, and to impart what I know, my research, my education, my wisdom to other dog people, dog guardians, people that work with dogs, whomever it might be, um, so that they can take along with them what I have learned and how I have seen that, um, looking at dogs from a different um, angle, it really does change everything. And so that's the ambassador part of it. The unconventional dog trainer, I would say that comes from, I have this very unique niche, which I focus on a triad of nutrition, life skills, and trying to help dogs behaviorally live in this modern day world when they're these ancient beings, because we put, as humans, we put so many unrealistic expectations on the dogs, and that is in part why we see so many issues and so many problems. And I wanted to do this channel. I wanted to get my word out to a broader audience because dogs are anxious, they're depressed, they're sick, and people are confused, they're stressed, and they're misled. And sadly, the very people that we would all hope would be giving us good information, valid information, helpful information to raise our dogs, they're not schooled, they're not educated, they're not experienced in nutrition or behavior or life skills. And so then you have this culmination of everything is mixed up, and the system is fractured. It doesn't work. And that's why, if it worked, we wouldn't have all of these issues where people are confused and misled, and dogs are, I mean, we have 6-month-old dogs in oncology units. That's not right. We have dogs that are 4 months old or 5 years old that are getting euthanized for a behavioral issue. That's not right. That's not normal. That is unacceptable. And I don't see that many people are asking why. And so my job that I've always done is I research, I read between the lines, and I try to determine, okay, what is this common denominator for X, Y, and Z happening? So, um, it's a paradigm shift. It really is. It's a matter of people sitting down, just even if it's for 30 seconds, to hear something that maybe they just haven't heard or they haven't really considered, and one little change changes everything. It's like, it's that ripple effect. So one positive change, and it could be in any of those three categories. It could be a tiny positive change in nutrition. It could be a change in what can you teach your dog for a life skill. Excuse me. It could be what can you do today, starting today, that could help your dog with supporting them behaviorally. Because really, at the end of the day, I don't believe, nor have I ever experienced in all of these decades, people wanting a robot as a companion. They just want to make sure that their dog is capable and able to interact in day-to-day life, is healthy, and is happy. And a lot of money and time is wasted in these old school approaches. And so I just hope that my my methodology for both ends of the leash is resonates with people, because um, it's not a one-sided formula. We have to look at ourselves in the mirror and we have to say, I brought this animal into my life, into my home. How do I positively or negatively impact that dog? And so that's where I come in, and I break all the pieces apart, and that really is what I believe, and what my clients have told me sets me apart as this unconventional dog expert. I mean, it's a mission. I remember being a wee little child and thinking, there there has to, like, how can I help these beings? How can I help them in all aspects? Because I think of it like a stool. So you could have a dog that is being fed the premier gold standard food, but if they don't have someone to guide them for life skills, the stool's not going, no one can sit on the stool. And vice versa, if they understand, if they have learned life skills and they have been introduced to things in a very um, fluid manner, but their food is subpar. Well, I think we all know at this stage of the game that poor food, adulterated food, is going to not only negatively impact the body, but it negatively impacts the brain, therefore the behavior. So then that throws the stool off kilter. So it is a mission. It's been a lifelong commitment and livelihood. Yeah. I think the other part of this is I came at this many, many, many eons ago as a dog trainer, thinking, okay, I'm going to learn how to teach obedience. And what I quickly learned was this: none of this made sense to me, because you could have a dog that sits and walks on a leash and holds a sit stay, but that's not realistic. That's not real life, because those are the same dogs that are have all this trepidation when a garbage truck goes by, or when they meet a child, or they're terrified of men, or they they don't they don't they don't know what to expect when they go to the vet, because the only time they're ever brought to the vet is when it's something not very good. So yeah, there are so many different topics that I'm really excited to get into.
Let's talk about the unleashed theory. What is it in your own words, and how did it come to life through your years of experience?
I mean, this literally became a method that was built over decades of me experiencing firsthand what works and what doesn't work. And so oftentimes, what I would come into was it was a one way or a one sided approach, and this antiquated mentality of, okay, I'd go into a client's house or I'd meet with them and they'd say, I just need you to teach me or teach my dog how to do, like I said before, sit down and walk on a leash. And over time, what I found was when I brought them into it, when I brought the people into it and shed light on how their energy impacts their dog's energy and their dog's behavior, how critical thinking is really important, how courage we all need courage to question the status quo because the status quo really is part of the problem. um, ha- Teaching people the importance of connection, and there's all different types of connection. Like there is physical connection, touching. There's eye contact. That's a connection. So many people don't even make eye contact with their dogs. It's really, some of these things are so easy that they can do. I wrote an article recently, and it's about I called it smile therapy, and it's the powerful impact that smiling has on your, not just your dog, but it's this reciprocity, and it circles back to you. So this unleashed method that I've created, it takes responsibilities that a human is important for a human to have, and then things to be aware of that your dog is either exposed to, experiencing, what it is. So there are two blueprints that I've made for the four-legged and the two-legged. And it's not just how can I feed my dog the healthiest food, it's also what are we eating? How is the food? How is our day-to-day routine? How is that all impacts a dog? How is our connection now to these devices? We know it's detrimental to us if it's not managed, but it impacts the dog too. So this unleashed method, it's not something that it's not like a sit stay where somebody's going to read the directions and then they apply it to their dog. It's a process. At the same time, I have seen dogs and their people, they have transformed from confused and not well and frustrated to they're really they're really I mean, it sounds corny, but they're so many people have said to me, you taught me how to love my dog again, which I was kind of perplexed with because I thought, like, doesn't everybody just really love their dog? And I was perplexed though because everything looks seems like a Kodak moment. You get a puppy or you adopt a dog, whatever the circumstances might be, and then reality hits. It's like, okay, the dog has teeth like a shark. The dog is chasing one of the kids around that has, lacrosse shorts on, and the shorts, they're now on like the seventh pair of shorts. The dog has counter surfed and taken like 14 meals off the counter. There are all these things. And the dog's barking at people. They can't take the dog on a walk because the dog is scared to go on a walk. So yeah, you have this myriad of real life things that happen, and people are blindsided because for many reasons. They may just not have done the research, or they may have very realistic expectations. And expectations are one of the elements in my Unleashed. We need to have more realistic expectations for ourselves, but bar none, we have to have very realistic expectations for our dogs, because they are so much smarter than I think any of us give them credit for. And it's not your dog's job to live up to your expectations. It's your job to support your dog to live up to their potential. And we stop walking, like sleepwalking through life and going to the vet. Okay, I have to go to the vet every whatever, 6 months or 12 months. I have to get all of these vaccines. Okay, I have to feed this food. Oh, my vet, my breeder, my trainer, my friend, the TV, the YouTube, the Instagram, everything's telling me to feed this, don't feed that. There's a lot of confusion out there. And I don't have a stake. I don't have a monetary stake in telling people certain products, foods, or ways of raising their dog. I'm really here genuinely just to help them, because I know that this this mindset, this formula, it really does peel away the layers that don't need to be there. And right at the center is this beautiful, sacred relationship that's just waiting to be nurtured.
It's priceless. So it's wonderful that you can help people get to that. I was just listening to the latest science on how they've determined that our heart vibration extends several feet outside our bodies. And so imagine how your dog feels that. Everybody around you feels that. But I don't think we think about how our energy really impacts our dog.
I concur. And the other part of this podcast, the intention, it's not just me feeding information out there. I my intention is to give gear suggestions, product suggestions, um, supplement suggestions, tips, hacks, just very practical things that will help people. And the other part, yeah, just to address something you said a second ago with the heart and the energy and how it impacts our dogs. The one thing that I have found over all this time that is so consistent, and it really is a major component as to the disconnect between dog and human, is we're verbal. Dogs are nonverbal. And yet we still keep running our mouth, wondering why the dogs don't understand us. But that's because they really don't speak English. And it's so unfair for us to put that, again, unrealistic expectation on them. And I just have found that if I can just kind of I have cracked a code to a certain degree. Like I'm not some magician here. I'm not pretending to be a magician. At the same time, there are very simple things that people can implement, and body language is definitely one of the first ones. Like, so the smile therapy that I was referring to before, that's body language. So there are often times throughout the day where I just instinctually do it because it's me, but it's a good practice to get into, which is there's no verbal communication with your dog. Have have hand signals, have gestures, your different eye contacts. Like dogs can identify the dilatation of our pupils. So if they're able to detect some kind of a change like that, that probably not many humans would not be noticing that. That's how powerful a dog's ability is to read body language. I mean, they are masters at reading body language. So we should capitalize on that, and we should take advantage of it so that it not only helps them, but then it helps to soften the relationship between us and them.
From the outside, people might assume this is another training method, but it's so much more. How does unleashed go beyond behavior and into something deeper?
Most of the time, when people are interacting with their dogs, they either have been told by a trainer of some sort, or maybe that's just how their family did it when they were little, and for whatever reason. And people's go-to is to make some kind of a correction. Stop it. Don't do that. Bad dog. Then they might get physical, God forbid, with the dog. But that's the reality. People do these types of things. And one of the underlying tenets of this unleashed method is that it takes time. I mean, it takes a lot of time. We have to condition ourselves to learn new behaviors, just like we're asking our dogs to try to condition them for new behaviors, um, which is rather than react, respond and acknowledge all of the many behaviors that your dog offers throughout the day that you view or deem, or all of us generally would view or deem acceptable. So, for instance, if you have a dog that is counter surfing, now every situation is different. Every dog is an individual. So, my suggestions, recommendations for this kind of a topic is just general. However, if you have a dog that's counter surfing, one of the best ways to approach it is because a dog is not counter surfing 24/7. That's impossible. And if they are, you probably have to clean up your kitchen. So, I mean, like, you're kind of a slob if you've got that much stuff on the counter that the dogs are trying to eat or get up there. Um, so, because the dog is not counter surfing 24/7, that means you have all of those other times when your dog is, I'm just going to say the kitchen, but your dog is in that area where you can acknowledge the behavior that is acceptable. What's the acceptable behavior? The dog has 4 feet on the ground. That's it. That's normal. And you just look down to your dog and you say, what a good off. That's a good off. You can even use a hand signal, like a dogs have what are called inferential learning, or inference learning, excuse me, where you point. So if I say to you, Tiffany, can you get that pen? A lot of animals, they're not capable of doing that. Dogs are one of them that can do it. So you could couple the good off. That's a good boy, good girl. Now, that's not to say I'm suggesting pointing at your dog, because that is not a good thing to do. And that creates a lot of reactivity from a dog's angle. But that's one of the things that does set the unleashed apart, because it's not focused in the negative, it's focused in the positive. So you've got endless opportunities throughout the day and night to acknowledge behavior that you like. You can pet them, talk to them, you can give them a treat, um, and that reinforces the behavior you want. That's behavior 101, which is, if you want to see a behavior repeated, you need to reward it. That's why most people are working, they have a paycheck at the end of the week, right? So it's, they're getting conditioned and they know there's a payoff for it. The other part of it, though, and unleashed um is infiltrated with logic and common sense. So if you take all the dog learning out of it, and canine behavior modification and anything in between out of it, it's just common sense. If you don't want your dog to learn or to continue or to do counter surfing, for example, you have to have a clean counter. You have to set them up for success. So that's the other component of.
And I wonder how many people actually, play with their dogs for a little while and they ignore everything else except for the bad behavior. They don't ever acknowledge the good behavior. And that's so important.
I honestly don't know how. I don't know how dogs still are. It's fascinating to me how dogs are still so loving and patient and understanding, and they have all this unconditional love. And we are really so clueless as humans, and yet they still believe in us. And that brings me to another part of my Unleashed from the human part of it, which is once you believe in your dog and you go through each day and you assume competence, you assume that they are competent. That has this very subtle, it makes this subtle shift. The dogs know that. They pick up on it. As opposed to if you're going through your day, oh, this dog is so stupid. That comes through. That is such negative energy. I don't think I wouldn't want to be around somebody that thought that of me. And yet our dogs still stick around. So yeah, I mean it just takes a lot of awareness and asking yourself, what's it like to live with you? Like if you have a dog, I think it's really important as part of this blueprint to ask yourself that honest question. What's it like to be with me? Am I always on my phone? Do I how often do I get on the floor and play with my dog? How often do I get outside? How do I have a dog that basically is just held captive in my house? Because that's how a lot of dogs live. Or is it just self-serving? Do I have this beast or this animal or this being in my world just so it satisfies me? And if that's the reason, then you have the dog for a wrong reason. You should find a home that would really appreciate with gratitude what that dog has. So there's there's eight components, elements, pillars to each side of the Unleashed, and they all come together very nicely from the human side and the dog side. And I think we can just all learn so much from our dogs.
What an important question. What's it like to live with me? You're right. I think a lot of dogs are in jail. They get to go for a couple walks per day and get fed, and they're pretty much ignored otherwise. And what kind of quality of life is that for the dog at the end of the day?
It's not. And so during COVID, um, I I was working with people, and I remember it must have been by I don't know week three after we kept hearing flatten the curve, 10 days, and then it was to 3 weeks, and the the first thing that I thought about was how we were all feeling. We were all trapped. We couldn't socialize, or we were told we couldn't socialize. We we were tethered to one area, and so I wrote a blog. You can find it on People can find it on my site, and the one thing I thought of was this is how many dogs feel their entire life. They're subjugated, and they that's unacceptable. They should be elevated, they should be cherished, they should be um, they're not here for a long time, and they really should be honored. And I do believe that it's our responsibility if a dog is in our life. Doesn't matter if we wanted them or didn't want them. We're the human. We have a larger brain capacity for critical thinking, and it's our responsibility to do good by them, to return the love that they so generously give to us.
It's really the true definition of unconditional love. There's no other better definition in this world, I don't think.
Hey, listen, dogs make us better people, and they're they have always been by our side from thousands of years ago in war. Um, in today's day and age, they're authentic, real, qualified service dogs are doing great work. Um, Everything in between. And so we have so many resources at our disposal. At the same time, it just seems as if so many people are not aware of something that has nothing really to do with dog training.
So true. Before we keep going, I'd love to hear from the viewers. If you're watching this and you've ever felt like your dog's trying to tell you something or that there's something deep going on, maybe that the training just can't seem to fix, drop a comment below. Let us know what questions you have, what you're struggling with. Tell us a little about your beloved companion, and we may feature your question and your dog in a future episode. All right, let's keep going. You describe dogs as being energetic mirrors for us. Can you explain what that means and why it's such a crucial part of your philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to, in part, that dogs are masters of reading body language. Um, Now, that is they're watching patterns, they're watching nuances that human might not pick up on. But they're also sensing. They do have these sixth senses where they're sensing something. There might be agitation, or there might be calmness, whatever it might be, and so they extrapolate all of that at a very in a very succinct way, because these are wild animals. Although they don't seem like it, these are ancient beings that have over time come into our lives, and I find that when we forget that, that's where a lot of the confusion and the frustration comes in. But the mirror part, I see it oftentimes when I have a client that has a client whose dog is demonstrating separation anxiety or like isolation distress. And so I have a very detailed intake form when I work with clients. And excuse me, the intake form can shed a good amount of light. The way I created my questions, they can shed a lot of light for me on, okay, what is this person interpreting as the problem that they and their dog are dealing with, but also what kind of person is the dog owner. And I honestly, I think it's 100% that every time there's a dog with separation anxiety, the human or humans, they have some type of anxiety. Now, that's not to shame somebody for having anxiety. It's if you're asking someone to get to the bottom of why an animal that is sharing your space with has anxiety, you do need to acknowledge that your anxiety or your anger or your happiness and your blissfulness, whatever it is going to reflect back onto your dog. And the mirroring part. What I think is really interesting is when I said before, dogs make us better people. A lot of times you could do little science experiments, and you can do anything, but in this case, to the question of the mirroring, it's you could see what is your dog's behavior like when you're smiling, laughing, and dancing and playing, let's say. And then the other experiment is, what is your dog's behavior like when you're on your device, you're cranky, you have a scowl on your face, and you're rigid? You're going to see two different behaviors, demeanors, overall energetic displays from your dog. One of the really quick, I just wanted to add one thing that I notice, whether I'm not so much with my clients, because when I'm with a client, um, they're appreciating the time that we have together, and we're face to face or we're on a Zoom, and they're not doing this. But just in a typical day, I could be driving or walking or doing something, and I see people walking their dogs. And I would say probably 75 to 80% of the time, the person's on their phone and their dog, they're just walking their dogs. That is one of my elements of Unleashed. You're not connected. Not to mention, I mean, all the hazards that are involved with doing that anyway. We're talking about the how does it relate to rearing a dog or living with a dog? That's that doesn't work. Your dog knows that.
Without diving too deep in just yet, can you give us a bird's eye view of the key pillars within the Unleashed theory?
So back to what I was saying before. So I have two main pillars, two parts of it. And there's the human side and then there's the dog side. And some of the components of it are similar and from dog to human and some are not. So each of them has a blueprint for what is the ideal way to see and see your dog and be as a dog guardian, right? So just the concept of balancing and nurturing the mind, body, and spirit, that's part of the blueprint on the human side. Expectations, that's part of it on the human side under blueprint. Excuse me. Hang on one sec. On the dog side, there's what is this for the blueprint? For example, one of the questions that I unravel is what is this dog's capacity to adapt? Because your dog and my dogs um, and my neighbor's dogs, if they're presented with different stimuli or in different environments, they're all going to adapt or respond differently. So you really need to know your dog. And how does your dog orient to things? So I have one dog that's very visual. My other dog is very um, scent oriented. So it's very olfactory. And so knowing that, again, knowing your dog, what are your dog's strengths and where are your dog's weaknesses? You want to focus on and live in those strengths of your dog. Is it helps them to have more confidence, to understand and to learn. So in general, you want to boost your dog's confidence. And when confidence goes up, stress goes down. You don't want it the other way around. And a lot of times it's inverted. And I might be on a walk and see seven dogs being walked by seven different people. Probably five of those dogs are not dog friendly, are not dog to dog friendly, excuse me. So there's dog to dog reactivity, like where two dogs, they just are not getting along, or just one of them is not very socialized or comfortable. And then there's dog to human sociability. I'm just talking right now about the dog to dog. And 5 out of 7, that's a high percentage where dogs they have not learned the life skills, or they were not exposed appropriately, or they weren't socialized gradually or age appropriately or just appropriately for them. And so then they get older and their circle gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So we have, unfortunately, what has happened over probably 40 years has been we have taken the most social animal and we've desocialized them. And then we blame them. So with depression, just like with the human or any animal, with depression, with coercion, with um, nefarious or aversive tactics, approaches, would have you, that ends up going so deep. into a dog's being that oftentimes it metastasizes into, then that dog has health issues, physical health issues. And you bring them to the vet and it's either diagnosed or it's, I don't know, it's idiopathic, blah, blah, blah. But our job, our responsibility again is determining what is the best blueprint for each of our individual dogs. So if I had 10 Labradors, I would be rearing 10 Labradors slightly differently. Why? Because they're 10 different beings, right? So there's the blueprints for both the human and the dog. Then there's courage. I think I mentioned that before. That falls on the human side. And I'll give you an example of courage. You go to the vet and they say, "Yeah, this is the food your dog should be on," and you think that doesn't seem like it's really healthy food. But my vet told me to. Okay, that's when you have to question the status quo, question authority, and that's when you have to advocate for your dog and speak up. And it makes all the difference in the world. So that would be courage. Just a snippet of that, just to kind of give you a peek into that. The other part is critical thinking. I find that so many times people have either gone to an obedience school or they went to their vet or their breeder or again like their neighbor or their family in the past with having dogs, and they'll say, oh yeah, well, you have to do a an alpha rollover, or you have to get a prong collar and correct your dog if they're not sitting. Well, if you're paying attention, that's where that's just common sense. That is just common sense. And to say, I think there should be there's we can do better. There has to be a better way. And there's a saying, strength is in gentleness. And there I am absolutely not saying that, dogs should be running the roost and walking on kitchen counters and jumping up on people and tearing through the trash. That's the furthest thing that I'm saying. At the same token, we really do have to just think through, okay, how do I want to live with this animal and what's fair, and how can I look at things from that through the eyes of that each individual dog, from that dog's perspective. And when you do that, you're exercising awareness, and awareness precedes change. And I think if somebody's on this channel, they're seeking some type of change. And I just want to finish with one really quick comment, because I feel like, no one knows my background. They can get my background on my website. They'll learn more about me over time. But one of the things that led me to where I'm at now is when I first started. I mentioned before I was training. I was under tutelages from different experts and trainers for obedience. And at the time, I had a Labrador retriever, and I had her as a puppy. And she was about 7 months old, and she just kept getting sick. And without going in all the details, she kept getting sick, and it was so. I was perplexed. The vets were perplexed. Um, and I realized, at one point I said to myself, okay, and I was very young. I was in my early 20s. I remember saying to myself, so every time I bring her to the vet says, because many times she was throwing up and then she would have loose stool, diarrhea, what have you. They would say, okay, feed her boiled chicken and rice and, cook it and feed her. And I would do that. And I found so much, there was so much love that went into me cooking, even though I didn't like to cook at the time. And I would prepare it nicely for her. And anyway, she would eat it and she would get better. And this happened over and over again. And I thought, okay, I didn't go to vet school, but this is kind of like, this is like, isn't this really obvious to everybody? Every time my dog gets better, she's eating real food. And people will say, oh, you give your dog human food. So, news alert, it's not human food. The food, whole food, is for every living being out there. So, I think that's a myth that really has to be busted right out of the gate. After Chloe got better, and by the way, she got better because I stopped feeding her kibble and what I thought was like the premier food. And I completely revamped her diet. And that brought me into the whole world of canine nutrition. And I went to school and I researched all of that. And I had real life experience. And I
Mhm.
saw that a raw diet, what incredible transformations took place with it. Fast forward, then I had another dog. He was 3.5, a rescue beagle. And excuse me, he had skin issues, severe skin issues, gunk in his eye. He was not well. And I had already started with Chloe with this new lifestyle approach with food and clean, green, non-toxic environment in and outside of the house. And I saw the benefits of it because I was also adding drips and drabs of it to my clients' appointments. And then I adopted this dog, did the same thing with him. And no lie, within, this was a long time ago, but to my recollection, it was probably 2 to 3 months max. I think in like 30 days, I saw a dramatic difference, but that was it. No, never again ear infections, skin issues, stools were great. Um, so it really does alter everything from like a mitochondrial point all the way to just health and happiness and everything in between.
You think back in the wild, I mean, there was no kibble, right? We invented that for dogs. And it doesn't really make sense. I have a friend who has a friend who started a raw food business in California. And she said what prompted her to do it was she saw how a piece of kibble that got wet in her sink expanded to several times its size and never disintegrated, and it freaked her out. So she started feeding her dogs raw food and then started a business.
I've done that too, and there are a lot of different, very simplistic ways that I think if we start actually paying attention to what the experts are suggesting that we do, we would start questioning. You have to question the status quo. I've never seen an obese wild animal ever. Just doesn't exist. Why? Because they're eating a species appropriate diet, whatever species they are. But the other thing, and I think that it's important to note because I was one of these people. A lot of my inspiration came from desperation because I was not getting nothing. My dog, that was my heart and soul, nothing that they suggested was getting her better. And everything just fell on me, or I should say, I took it upon me, where I wanted to make sure I need to get to the bottom of this. Nothing is adding up here. And so a lot of people come to me like I had experienced, where they are so desperate because they have spent thousands and thousands of dollars on vet visits, vet appointments, for different reasons, and mostly because of allergies or skin or digestive issues. It could be I have a lot of cardiac clients that their dogs have enlarged hearts, and I work with them very customized nutritional protocol to help support the heart. And there are things to do and things not to do, and I think we're all of us are trained to, okay, we have this task or we have this responsibility. What do I have to do? What do I have to do? A lot of times it's what just not doing things, just being. Everything is connected, but if we're constantly running around trying to we're bringing our dog to like 15 vets for this, that, and the other. Um, at some point, there has to be a line drawn to say, is this a good quality of life for my dog? Like, this is probably somewhat stressful for them. And I'm not here saying you should not build a team. I'm actually saying the opposite. You should build a team. You should build a really healthy network of a trainer, a holistic, if you can, and nowadays you can because everybody's remote in one way or another, a holistic vet or practitioner. Um, and you build this team, and you don't have just like a GP or an internist for your vet, excuse me, for your dog. You have a an eye specialist, you have a gastro specialist, you have an orthopedic. So you get the best of the best in those specialties to answer your questions. All I was saying before was sometimes people can go overboard and then they forget, they lose sight of, okay, I need to just, my dog just wants to be and should be a dog. Appreciate the time that you have with them while at the same token creating a very cohesive um, cohesive approach to help them be healthy and everything for their well-being.
Why do you feel this message is so urgently needed right now, especially with what's happening in this world?
um, I believe it's needed because I know there's a better way, and it's it is part of my makeup to do whatever I can to impart and enlighten and educate people so that they can honestly just see their dogs in a new light. And by doing so, I mean, I think, and I've seen it happen where unfortunately these walls are built up between, oftentimes between people and their dogs or a dog. And what I find is that not just my Unleash program, but just even if someone hires me to do a nutritional consultation with them, by working with me and hearing this very unique, bespoken approach, it takes down the walls and it creates these bridges where there's congruency, and you realize that there are all of these different nuances and things that we potentially could be directly or indirectly doing with our dogs, that if we just constantly make a reminder on our end and we ask ourselves, wait, like, what am I teaching? What exactly am I teaching? um I do believe that it resonates with people because people have learned, especially in the past few years, there there has been a lot of lies out there, and people are looking for alternatives because they know that many systems are broken, And unfortunately, some of the areas and systems that are broken are the veterinary system, the veterinary world, the big box food companies, or in other words, kibble. And that's not to say I'm not here to say um, I'm not here to um, attack veterinarians. That's not at all my intention. Veterinarians are dedicated people that give a lot of their life to bettering animals' lives. At the same token, they are experts in medicine and or surgery. They are not only are they not experts in nutrition and behavior, like I said earlier, but they don't have schooling in it. So most people don't realize that. So they see someone that has gone to vet school, they have a white lab coat on, and they just take what is being told to them and they run with it. And um, it doesn't matter who tells anyone anything. I just believe that it's really important for all of us to do our own research and then do it again and then do it, thrice. And after a certain number of rounds of passes of researching, you start to see what is accurate and what is a myth or inaccurate. We have to, a part of it is also listening, having faith in your dog and listening to them, um, because they really are talking to you in their own way with their own body language. If we just slow down and give them a chance. And I want to just say one final thing. Your dog is in your life for a reason. You may not know what that reason is right now, but trust that that is that is what why that that beautiful animal has come into your life. That animal might be there to teach you more patience. The animal might be there to teach you about how to slow down, how to eat better, how to be more curious, how to be silly, how to find your inner child, how to laugh more, how to not take the world so seriously, how to breathe. I mean, the list can go on, but your dog honestly is there for a reason.
Very true. They find you just the right dog at just the right time for just the right lesson. What would you say to a dog owner that senses that something's off but hasn't found any answers in traditional approaches?
Uh, oh gosh, there's so much I would say to them. I would acknowledge that good for them that they just knew something was off, because that's the beginning of unraveling or getting to the bottom of something. Um, the second thing I would say to them is, excuse me, there is another way. And I think that's something else that sets me apart, which is there's not just one answer to everything. So if someone says, I need help, I need help with I don't know, walking on a leash, or I need help with socializing my dog around men. There's not one answer. And so I do know that when people hear that there's plan A, I have plan B. Okay, plan A, B, C, and D didn't work. No problem. We're going to go to plan D. Um, and sometimes it just requires we have to take a different angle and look at this a different way. The other thing is, I think a lot of people, they get a dog, and it goes back to this expectation topic. And they get a dog and they'll say, I just want my dog to lie down at my feet while I have dinner, or while after I get home from a long day of work. I just want the dog to lie down at my feet or not be, all over the place. In the meantime, they have either a border collie or a Malinois. It's like that was a bad choice. If that's actually what you wanted, you did not do one iota of research. And so I can't really help you with that. You suck at making decisions. I think the other part of this puzzle is, people, they 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 get they get I don't know, I want to say swayed, or they're tricked, or they're coerced, where they see a dog, whatever the dog, it could be a purebred or a mutt, and the dog is to them, wow, that this dog is so nice looking. What a beautiful dog. But they're not going deeper and asking the questions. Okay, if it's a purebred, what was this dog literally selectively bred to do? Was this dog selectively bred to be in the field tracking or retrieving from sunrise to sunset? Well, if that's the case, you better have a lot of energy. You better be somebody that has your shoes on, your sneakers on a lot during the day. Or the other side is this dog a let's say a ratter, a dog that is hardwired to go into burrows in the ground to pull out rats? Then you calling somebody like me to say, I don't know why my dog is digging holes in the backyard. Well, but that's because your dog that's the dog is wired that way. If people are not either doing their homework, and sometimes dogs just fall into people's laps, and it is what it is. If that's the case, then embrace the dog that has fallen into your lap, and you might have to be the one to pivot, because I think a lot of times we think dogs are giving us a hard time, and the real hard truth is your dog is having a hard time. And if you can honestly just let that penetrate, I think it just creates this abundance of empathy where you say, wow, I can only imagine what it's like to be this animal. um we want to instill the best of us into our dogs, just like they are instilling the goodness of them in us.
Thank you, Tamara. This was such a powerful opening conversation, and I know we're just scratching the surface. I'm so excited to go deeper, to dive into all the unleashed principles and learn more. To all the listeners out there, make sure you subscribe, like this video, and hit the bell icon. You don't want to miss what's coming next. And if you'd like to go deeper and be part of the conversation, you can now join our Patreon community, where we'll be hosting live Q&A sessions once a month. You'll find the link below in our description, along with Tamara's book, Blessed, and her website, if you'd like to work with her directly or to learn more. Until next time, trust your instincts, listen with your heart, and stay connected to those you love the most.